Welcome to another episode of the Dentology podcast, where we discuss the business of dentistry. In this podcast series, we'll be discussing all the non-clinical aspects of dentistry, from goodwill values, finance, marketing, how to buy and sell a dental practice, mindset, through to where you can invest your money in team management issues. My name is Andy Acton, and I'm joined by my co-host, Chris Strevens. Let's jump straight into it. So welcome to another episode of Dentology, the Business of Dentistry podcast. And today we're joined by David Claridge. And David served 38 years in dentistry to date as a dental technician, lab owner, and more recently in the corporate world as a product manager for intraoral scanners, covering 26 countries, nonetheless. Yeah. He won the National Sports Technology Award for the use of disruptive technology in sports protective equipment. So good to find out a bit about that and what went on there. But he's now returned to the UK as the digital business director for a group of UK dental labs. And he won't mind me saying that his passion is intraoral scanners and their associated workflows as business tools. Welcome, David.
Must have started young, David, mustn't he?
Very young. Yeah, absolutely. Welcome, David. How are you? Good to see you.
I'm absolutely fantastic. I have the enthusiasm of a 20-year-old in the body of a 75-year-old.
Excellent.
Yeah. I like it. I kept you. So could you, I'd like to ask you about that Sports Technology Award and what that was, but could you just give a bit of background to yourself, where you came from and how you ended up in dentistry, and you've stayed for so long?
I have. Well, where I came from, I think where I came from, I think, Andy, somebody needs to have a chat to you about the birds and the bees. We can go back to there if you want. My mum and dad met many, many years ago, but let's fast forward that bit, shall we?
Let's fast forward to your later school years. That'll be far enough.
Yes. I know you don't want to remind me of those. Thank you very much. So I got involved in dental technology because of the crashing of my later school years. So, and I didn't want to stick. I left school at 16, joined a dental practice. I was actually a patient at that practice, but there's an advert in the paper, and I thought that doesn't sound like a stiff job of just sat in an office wearing a suit all day. Little did I know, 5 years later, that it was sat in a different kind of office wearing a white coat every day. But you were making stuff, which I like doing, right? So it's tactile, practical,
David, can I just ask, what was the job you went for? Was it to do with labs?
It was as an apprentice dental technician at the Dental Centre in Newbury. Yeah. So I started as a 16-year-old apprentice. And then probably 8 years later, or what it was, I'd gone self-employed and I moved out of the Briars. The great thing about being in-house is you saw people. Right. So I went down and sat chairside a lot. So you're very accountable as a dental technician when you're seeing patients, when you're doing real work, so that was interesting. Right. But ultimately being in one practice sort of straitjacketed how much work you would receive from other practices that were seeing themselves as in competition, Yeah. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so moved out, expanded a little bit. At a small prosthetic laboratory. I was playing rugby all through this time, right? And so another jump, probably about 10 years later, was asked for mouth guards, right? So I thought, well, I can't make a mouth guard because I can't take an impression. So I brought in a dentist. A friend of mine, Neil, attended Newbury Rugby Club one evening, and about 45 kids turned up with their parents, right, saying, yes, we'll get a mouth guard made. And I thought, wow, this is okay.
That's just that's amazing.
That's very entrepreneurial.
Well, it was just, it was just an idea. It wasn't any forethought
of opportunity.
Yeah. Well, yes. So that idea then led to an opportunity which I kind of grasped. So over the next couple of years, I basically phased out my kind of traditional lab work to the point where one Christmas I said, right, I've got to do the mouth guards or I've got to be a traditional lab, if you like. I can't do both because I can't tell my dentist in September or in August and September and first 2 weeks in October, I'm out. Don't send me any more work for 6 weeks period because I've got to produce 8,000 mouth guards in that time, right? So then it became, and it was actually at that time, guys, that I realized I'm a people person. So I'd probably done my time at the bench, and when you went to schools, so January, February, March, I was going to predominantly public schools, right, who either had a service already, so we had to improve on what they were getting already, So we took dentists into schools, made mouth guards. Over 9 years, we made just short 40,000 mouth guards. Right? So I know how to make a mouth guard. Right? And then, so that was my career. Now, I got lucky at the end of that. And I'd had enough of that after that many years because my business was honestly made on foundations of sand, right? Because if I couldn't get those legal hands, those dentists to come out to play with at schools, I've got no income, right? So as it grew bigger, so did my worry, right? To the point where I thought, and my wife said, is it really worth it? And I got lucky. So somebody bought it. So I got a bit of money for that business. And then I joined the corporate world. I joined 3M. And then 6 months later, 3M launched an intraoral scanner and said, well, you know all about the benefits of this. And I thought, this is unbelievable. How did I get
when was
that?
Yeah, I was going to say,
when was that first intraoral scanner?
That's about 14, 15 years ago, something like that.
Wow.
So I've been involved in intraoral scanning for 14, 15 years.
Yeah, clunky, I'd imagine then.
It was clunky. You had to powder all the teeth, and that was like,
oh, wow.
the snowstorm. Yeah, you had to powder the surfaces because otherwise it's too reflective to pick up. And it was slow. It wasn't, the systems weren't, well, here's the thing. It wasn't the system that the issue. It was all about adoption and change. Right. And we're still in that curve. We're further down that curve. I got some new revised figures yesterday, and I've now really rethought my ideas of the adoption rate of intraoral scanners in the UK now. But anyway, so I got involved in intraoral scanners back then. And it was a joy to go out, but I was preaching what the future was holding, right? And now with some hindsight and some knowledge, if you like, from reading up, my Bible was Geoffrey Moore's book, Crossing the Chasm. And they talk all about disruptive technology and adoption rates and the fact that it's not a given that it will go up that curve, right? That adoption curve. There's a gap in that curve, and you must realize that the buyer's needs change. Now we're into that gap in the UK. So we've got to understand now that when you've got 15% of all dentists out there that have got scanners, now 15% is a small percentage of dentists in the UK, but it's a large percentage of clinics because it's usually one scanner is being shared, Right, but anyway, so if I go back in the day, you can see where my passion now is through all the pain points that I lived of the old world, as I call it, the Stone Age, when we were using gypsum all the time. Yeah, thank you very much. I thought that'd get more of a titter from you gentlemen, but you never know. Some hit, some miss.
That's right. We're listening intently.
But anyway,
David, we can edit in that in post. It's fine. When we finish recording, Chris and I will laugh, really a real big belly laugh, and we'll edit it in. It's fine.
In fact, what we'll do is maybe we'll put an audience laughing. Does that work for you?
So
film it in front of a live audience or something for you.
So what you're saying is you can introduce the clap.
Yeah, exactly. He's off again.
Right, back on track. Right, so you can see where these kind of career kind of welded. And I was very lucky to be involved in a technology that I thought, I get this. I really get this. But then sort of 10 years later, I'm thinking, why isn't everybody else getting this? Why is this still niche? The early 2%, the innovators, they grab their toys. It tends to be boys with toys. That's reality, right? Now, those people don't necessarily want to preach and convert others, but that's the early adopters. Right? The early adopters then get hold of it, and then they want to say to other people, look what I'm doing, you should try this, right? But I realized what we did at 3M in hindsight, reading Geoffrey Moore's book, because there's a thing about adoption, and that if you have a disruptive technology, which a digital impression scanner, right, an intraoral scanner as they're called now, that's telling the dentist that what you've done for your entire career was wrong, and it's now been superseded, and you have to change. And then it says, why do I have to change? Because I'm not seeing that as being a pain point, Why do I need to change? But anyway, so the theory, Geoffrey Moore's theory,
David, the kind of the change thing, that everybody says kind of the only constant is change. And there's obviously been a lot of change, but has it all been good? Because, we kind of go with it and it kind of moves down the path, doesn't it? But has it genuinely all been good for the profession, the change that's come? Or have we kind of taken some bits on the way with us that have perhaps moved us away from where we were? Not necessarily in a good way.
It's a very good point. On consideration, I suppose I'm in such a niche field that all change is good. Right? Because I just can't see a reason to stay with the status quo other than your fear of technology, maybe, one of my I got 22 questions that I asked dentists when helping them decide which intraoral scanner to go for, right? I've got vetting questions, right? And one of them is, what is your fear? And it really opens up the whole thing. Another one is, how do you feel about computers? If one is you never touch one. 10 is you've got 6 on the dining room table in bits, and you're fiddling around with motherboards and stuff like this, right? So I'm trying to uncover the reason why dentists haven't taken on board technology by now.
On the fear
I
question,
think it's all good, Andy.
The fear question, what's kind of the most common answer to that question? What they're fearful of?
There's quite a few, to be honest. So only asking 22 questions can you get a real picture of what is the best scanner, or don't get a scanner. And I'm happy to end up with that conclusion because, we offer a subscription model of scanners. What I don't want is a dentist say, yes, I'll have that one, because they could hand it back to us after 12 months, right? So I want to make sure that they make the right choice for them. Now, the fear, technology, or a fear of technology, comes up there. Equally at the top would be a fear that you're putting all your money on red and black is going to win the day, right? So it's a heavy capex investment of, let's say it's 20 grand, right? Some are more, some are less, right? So let's say you're investing £20,000 now, and they see that as a gamble. And the third thing is a nervousness to get on board with something, right? So that is very indicative of the buyer in that adoption curve. The early majority buyer needs to make sure that their hand is held with training and support. They need to make sure that they're not a guinea pig, right? I alluded to the other day, and somebody said, yeah, that's absolutely bang right. I get that analogy, which is like, if you're coaxing, you say you've got a little mouse hole, right? And you want to see this little field mouse come out or something, right? So you put food out there and you coax it out, right? If you snap your fingers, that mouse is going to go shooting back into that hole and it won't come out for double the time, right? So if the first experience of a scanner with a dentist is a bad one, they're going to go back into their little hole and they're not going to come out for a long time.
We used to find that, didn't we, with people who would buy high-tech equipment, use it once, not be very good at it because they either weren't really up for it or didn't get the training, and then they never used it. So you'd end up I remember one time, some guy bought a Cerec or something, and he sort of used it as a very expensive coat hanger eventually. We just said to him, why are you not actually getting training and utilising? Because when you look at the financials of people utilizing scanners and what it saves and, money, time, what you can generate and all that sort of stuff, it is sort of a bit of a no-brainer, isn't it, really?
It is, but they're still being purchased emotionally rather than rationally.
Yeah.
So, like, as most of us buy emotionally, we put rational arguments, especially if I want to buy something that, I will tell my wife the rational arguments why I must have this, I need this, but I don't need it, I want it.
Needs and wants, they're very different things, aren't they?
Absolutely, aren't they? And they're interspersed.
Yeah. So the technology over time has obviously changed, and you're in a unique position where you obviously see the lab side of things, but also the dental practice side of things. And how's it benefited kind of both sides of that fence?
Yeah. So in my position, I think from a let's say two halves to that, say the clinician's version. So, you go digital, what can you immediately do different than you could do with your impressions, right? So intraoral scanners offer a view of the end treatment to the patient immediately. Look at Invisalign, right? You can show your patients, and other systems do that. Other scanners do that. You can take a scan of me and you can show me, Dr. Acton, you could show me what my smile is going to look like at the end of treatment in a heartbeat, right? In 2 minutes, right? Now, that's what digital brings, right? And what's the added benefit to that is treatment uptake, And so digital doesn't lie. It's not that there's a reason for the treatment because there's a reason given. I was diagnosed with sleep apnea, and the screening was that a dentist in Northern Ireland sent me a little widget that I put on my index finger, and he got the reports of my nightly activities, my interruptions, right? And over 2 nights, he said, your sleep has been interrupted on average 49 times. You need to go and see a doctor. And I knew. Wow. Yeah, absolutely. And I knew that I snored, but I didn't know it was sleep apnea, and they're totally different things. So I go to the doctor. The downside is I then get a referral to Bristol Royal Infirmary, and it takes 8 months, on the NASH to queue up for that. But they give me a CPAP machine. I wear it at nights. I go to bed like Jacques Cousteau, with this thing sort of stuck to my nose. But the energy levels, massively different. So technology, what did it give me? It gave me evidence that I didn't, now I did, if you flip that onto where I was at a practice last week the week before, in Ireland. And this lady does a lot of Invisalign with their patients, and there's a QR code on the wall, right? I said, with a picture of before and after with this lady, they just laminated a bit of A4, right? And I said, what's that? They said, I'll take a picture on your phone and then press the QR code. So I pressed the QR code, and immediately on my phone is a picture of my realigned smile, right?
Wow.
Now, yeah.
Very powerful as well.
Powerful, absolutely. Now, I had, before I did that, I had no thoughts about realigning my teeth because, hey, you can't gild a lily, gentlemen. or polish a turd, as somebody said.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I had no thoughts of realignment or doing any aligner treatment or having any aligner treatment done until I saw what my straightened teeth looked like. And I thought, whoa, that's quite tempting. So from zero interest in it to halfway down the sales process, and that's what technology brings for the dentist and patient.
I'll tell you what, David, that was one of the questions I was going to ask you. Do you, because obviously you have to train them how to use it, but do you also then provide effectively the how to do the sales training to actually then benefit from it? Because using it is a whole different thing than selling it and turning it into an income generator, isn't it?
Absolutely right, and I'm, the Ashley Latters of the world could do that far, far better than I ever can. But I was trained as a sales coach in my 3M days, and so I look at it's not the most important thing about an intraoral scanner is the person holding it, and are they getting the best out of that piece of kit? And are they using it? And what does their practice workflow look like? If they got, Marcus White is a glowing example of how to incorporate technology into a practice, and he's got a scanner in every room. But it's not the scanner. The scanner's the conduit. It's his workflow. It's his therapists. It's TCOs. So we go in. So I go in, and I enjoy that because I'm a people person. If I can help turn around. So look, if you get this scanner, if it sits in the corner and it's not being used, don't get one. Just don't get one, But why, I had a practice that was part of the corporate, and there are 5 dentists, and we put the scanner in on a trial basis. 2 months later, nobody had used it, right? So we went in, I interviewed every dentist, every nurse separately, right? With somebody from the board of the corporate, and understood. Now, everybody said, I love digital. I said, what phone are you using? Right, an old Nokia brick, So it's little indications of, are you up with technology or not, Because they all said yes. And I just asked the 5 whys, like the sales process that you just keep asking why until you uncover the real reason, right? And they had no interest in it at all. There was one person at that practice, a lady that left. She was a dental nurse. She'd left. She'd come back to the practice a year later, and I said, "Oh, why did you leave?" She said, "I went and got a sales job." And I thought, well, you should be utilized here, So swap the workflow around. The dentist sees the patient. That lady is now the treatment coordinator and the scanning room and the uptake. And once we swap that around, the uptake in Nash, the private treatment, which is what that practice wanted, they uptake, it was just short of 16 grand's worth of private treatment in the next month. Right?
Such a simple
which virtually
change.
Pays your scanner.
It did pay for the scanner. It did pay for the scanner.
Such a simple twist.
If people are adaptable to change
and open, you have to be open.
Yes,
and also it's identifying it, isn't it? Because it would have been very easy just to have said it didn't work in this environment and move on to the next one.
Well, our man with the Seric in the machine.
Yeah, exactly.
Because no one followed it up. He was the principal. He bought it. He spent the money. He never used it. He didn't like it, but he didn't really not like it. He just didn't know what to do with it.
See, I foresee a different workflow in the future. I foresee that the pain point of the in-house workflow for dentists traditionally, and this is a moot point, obviously, is that they have to become a technician in a little bit to do the design and do the software. And now, is their time best spent doing that? Or getting over once you're over the learning curve, and the software's got easier and easier, don't get me wrong, but back in the day, it was an arduous task to get, some years ago to get au fait with that, because, it's like I liken it to a technician and clinician. I liken it to, you're both building a cat, you're building a tooth, right? You're building a crown, you're building a denture, but one's a carpenter, one's a electrician. You're two different tasks, right?
Yeah.
Totally different tasks, but you complement each other. Now, so what I foresee, because I'm working with a lab in Belgium that are doing this, is that milling will be, printing will take over from milling. Because printing is an additive process. There's no wastage. You don't buy a block and then mill into a block, So it's better.
Yeah,
and
it's interesting. Yeah, you build it out. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so you only print what you need. There's no, it's not much wastage at all.
And they'll be able to print the materials hard enough. Wow.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
So, you can print a denture. So you could take an intraoral scan. Now, traditionally, you'd send it to the lab, and we could say you could send that scan to us in the lab, but you don't have to send it to us. We can dial into the software can be at your end. We can dial in and design that denture. The patient could see, because you can take a face scan as well, right? So you've taken intraoral scans, face scan, put them all together. The labs then use that to design the new full denture, complete denture, right? Show the patients a virtual try-in of that denture, and then go straight to a finished product. So now that is doable, but that's scary for a lot of dentists. They say, you're not doing a try-in. I said, well, why do you need a try-in? Well, to validate that the bite was correct. Well, the bite in digital is correct pretty much all the time, So you've taken out the
challenge. This is the challenge with change as well, isn't it? Because you're now, you go through a process where you learn to behave in a particular way, which you've done for 10, 20, 30 years. And then suddenly there's a bit of technology which is disruptive, that is repeatable and accurate within a very, fine degree. That's almost kind of challenging your professional approach to dentistry. So I can see why for lots of people that would disturb them.
It's Henry Fordish, isn't it? There's a quote from Henry Ford that says, if I'd have asked people what they wanted, they'd have wanted faster horses, because it's sort of completely moving the whole game from saying, well, actually, it's not about this. You've got to effectively trust this technology is going to be better than you've created this structure for overcoming errors that you don't need to have anymore, because you won't have to overcome them. It's fascinating.
So from a technician's point of view, obviously things have changed dramatically over the decades. And sometimes, I think back to when we first started work, and all of us, we didn't have email. So email wasn't available until we started work. It was letters. I'm not entirely sure.
Computers, mate.
Well, no, that's right. Yeah, well, I think they're still working on the wheel.
I was going to say letters. I predated those.
But I'm not sure that things are that much quicker now with email. I can send you a communication which will be within a minute, but I'm not truly sure that things are that much quicker. So from the technician's point of view, given all these advances in technology and what's available, how does it look like from their perspective? Have they now just got a different set of problems and challenges?
It's interesting. So I had this conversation with the heads of the family, as I call them, which are all the lab owners within our group, right? And I said,
it does, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I was just about to do my impression of Marlon Brando there.
You were, weren't you? I could sense it. You were going to shove something in your cheeks and off you go.
Yes, absolutely. Now, I know what he had in his mouth. I know the prosthetic, how it was designed, because I know a company. I mentioned their names.
I've seen a picture of it. There's a picture of it online. Yeah. It's a massive, great big contraption.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
It's not just cotton wool.
No.
Oh, right. Okay.
No.
Look at that.
And also, I know another lab that make teeth, if you like it, or special effects teeth for the movie industry, based in the UK. This lab is right. Fascinating conversation with them when I was last over there, and they said Jack Nicholson was the Joker many years ago. He played the Joker, right? Yeah, he had this big, wide smile, right? And then he had to talk, but then when he was at rest, right? When his cheeks were at rest, the big smile comes back, right? That was at repose, right? So he had elastics on his molars, right? That went outside of the mouth to behind, under the makeup, right? Under the prosthetic to behind his ears, so that those elastics would pull on the edge of his lips.
Wow.
When he rested and reposed, it would just pull it open, pull it up.
Flip.
Unbelievable, isn't it? Well,
how painful must that have been? To sit there and have your face constantly contorted. Wow.
But I've got all sorts of stories on that I can't say for legal reasons, just can't name the actor, but I know an actor that was slapped by the electrician on site because he was being a prima donna, and then everybody in that room never worked in the film industry again because they witnessed it, right? And wow. I should consult my solicitor and mention the name, and then wait for the legal team to get. But anyway, have we digressed, gentlemen?
But something following on from Andy's, which I was thinking, which I think is probably bringing us back on track after that fabulous divergence, was I'm assuming that all labs will have to have the ability to deal with the technology input from the dentist. So are there labs that still aren't able to?
No, there are labs that still aren't.
So have you then got that pushback from them saying, because they don't want to invest, they're sort of saying, oh, well, it's rubbish. So you don't want to, oh, no, you want to stay with a traditional hand carved.
So this
because that must be a challenge.
Yes, it is. So this goes back to adoption of disruptive technology and good old Geoffrey Moore's Bible that I read, Crossing the Chasm. And he said that when you're bringing in disruptive technology, and he looked at it as like an invasion, right? So you're invading these lands on the beach, right? Everybody that's got a vested interest in the status quo is there. They know you're coming, and they're ready to shoot you down, right? So with an intraoral scanner, that is every sales rep and every company that makes traditional impressioning material is out to get you. Mm-hmm. And they'll do it in a softly way. And they may say, it's not quite there yet, doctor. It's not, the technology's coming. And they just want to delay because they've got their annual targets, and stuff like that. Now, I was at 3M launching an intraoral scanner, and 3M Improgum and Express materials, impressioning materials, were a big chunk of the sales reps, targets. And I was internal strife there, So yes, so dental technicians, there is an inevitability about change. And once you get through change, history will tell you that from the first industrial revolution, jobs were lost, but jobs changed.
Yeah.
It's the process of change, which is the painful bit, the uncertainty. So Fred in the shed, as I call it, not disparagingly at all, but Fred in the shed, to keep up with the change, has to make hefty investments. Mm-hmm. And that's painful. If you are a one-man band, that's
And also, I guess, the digitization means that from a dental practice point of view, it's never been easier to access services globally because you're now sending digital files. So if there's some really good work going on down in, say, Portugal or Belgium or wherever it might be, before accessing that service would have elongated the process in terms of delivering the treatment, whereas now it's just zipping around digital files. You can access specialists that aren't just UK based.
So, and that's a concern from UK lab owners is that, work goes to China, and that was always a threat, but actually an intraoral scan going to China raises the threat level, right? Because it can be anywhere in the world in 2 minutes, Now, I spoke to a lab owner about 5 or 6 years ago, and he said, I don't trust, he's the only person I've ever met that says, I don't want to work with these intraoral scans because you could be sending those anywhere in the world. They could all go to China. And then we had a chat. I said, have you done, I said, I understand your threat. I understand that threat. Has that ever happened to you? And he said, no. I said, why not? If it's such a perceived threat. And he said, well, I give them a good service. I work with local dentists and I offer shade matching. I'm there to discuss cases and we can talk about cases. So I think, we talk about products in the lab world a lot and we forget actually services are massively important. And that's where the change is coming, through services. And digital can bring you services. So why not have a lab as a design center? So if I started up as a dental technician today, I would just get 2 laptops. Right. And I would offer design services for all those CEREC users that aren't doing the middle bit of designing. And I'll say, I'll do your design. You tell me when the scan's coming in. I'll do the design. I'll ping it back into you. Kind of things, will come in. Well, they are there already, but they're not en masse, So it might be that I told you about that digital workflow for dentures. So that could be a booked-in service. Now, for a dental lab to book in something is usually a pain because you react to the work that's coming in. You never know. It's like throw your nets out, your van drivers go out there. You don't, what haul did we catch yesterday? And then you try and plan, oh shit, we're busy, right? And you never know. It's reactive, So it's difficult to book in work. But if you've got the capacity, and it may be that this is the lab of the future where it's booked So they're remote labs, they're not in-house, but they're doing what we used to do in-house, right? Which is be there for the patient, to offer that immediate assistance. So a dentist could take a scan Monday morning, say it's booked in with me, say Monday morning. I know that there's a scan coming in at 10:15 from a dentist, and I'm going to do an immediate try-in to show the patient, and it's going to take me 15 minutes to do that. It's booked in with me. The patient then agrees and signs off. Then that agreed try-in is sent to print. That printer could be in the clinic. Now, I know as I say this, dental technicians are going to hate me for saying that, because that's disruptive change. But I'm not coming up with these ideas. I'm just hearing of people doing this stuff.
If it's coming, it's coming.
Yeah, I mean, you can't stop progress.
Well, if you look at Align Technologies, their plant down in Mexico for Invisalign, as I understand, they produce 250,000 unique aligners every 24 hours in that plant in Mexico, and it's just staggering the way those numbers are. And like you say, you can't fight against it. And the opportunities that come from it are enormous.
And look at the patient.
Sorry, I was saying, we always think, David, that dentures is a way underdeveloped part of the dental portfolio, because people think about horrible NHS, uncomfortable, slipping stuff. And we've always said, if you get a good quality set of dentures made properly, then they're actually really good, and they will be cheaper than a mouthful of implants. And it's an interesting one. Is it listening to you? You sort of can see the fact of that there's a revenue stream that maybe people haven't thought about, because they're sort of thinking implants or lots of training, all that sort of stuff, lots of surgery.
Well, we know people that have run businesses,
definitely,
and done really well out of a denture business.
So the UK is the largest, percentage of population of any European country that are denture wearers. There's allegedly 8 million denture wearers out there in the UK. Now, you're dead right about quality. The other thing is that traditionally they're a pain, right? Yeah. Because it's 6 visits, and traditionally under the NHS, the revenue at the end of that for lab or clinician is nothing, right? And then, so if we can take those 6 visits and go 1 visit for a scan, 1 virtual consult, 1 visit for a fit, and the amount of eases you have to do thereafter is clinically proven to be reduced, because everything is a little bit more spot on, still, and it's consistent. So I think there's a market there. Now, those dentures, those technicians that are then putting composite all over denture to customize it, these things look fantastic.
Yeah. David, you're in a fortunate position because you've worked all over the world. Virtually every jurisdiction that's available. From a UK point of view, specifically on kind of the business of dentistry side, where do we rank? Because you've like I say, you've worked everywhere. So are we quite sophisticated, our approach to the business side of dentistry? Are we Luddites who need to up our game? How does that look?
No. We're our mechanisms in business in dentistry. So there's the technology that we use. I'd say we're in the countries that I used to cover, 26 countries, we were second behind sort of as a group. UK comes behind Scandinavia, but then people will argue, rightly or wrongly, that's my observations, right? Scandinavia leads us in technology, and then the UK. And then areas of Europe, and then the Middle East, and those are the countries I covered, and South Africa as well. There's other things, though. There's culturally, that was interesting to me. My interest is people, right? Yeah. So culturally, in certain countries, cash is king, and you pay in cash or you don't take up the treatment. So there's no payment plans. There's no payment scheme. So we're quite evolved in that way in the UK. So we can help people get on board. You can pay monthly, subs and you're covered. Insurances, there aren't there in some of the countries I visited. It was a case of, no, we have the money, or we give you, would you believe they're working in post-dated checks? Wow. Now, the issue with that is in globalization, when you've got when you've got a Western organization, let's call it, dealing in an Eastern culture, those things don't marry, because, one culture is just totally conflicts in the way they do business together. Mm-hmm. So does that answer your question? The other thing is about people, and it's about trust. Mm-hmm. And that's my biggest learn, is that in the Middle East, I'll tell you a quick story, right? I did a presentation. I won't say where it is or anything like that, but I did a presentation over in the Middle East somewhere, right? and I thought it went okay, and it was great. And the owner of the company we were dealing with, he said, Mr. David, that was a fantastic presentation. I have Professor so and so from the university that has some questions. And the professor said, thank you, welcome to our country. Is this the first time you've been here? I said, yes, it is. Yeah, and it's lovely and it's so historic, and I hope to spend a day on the end of my trip. Blah blah blah. I said, so how can I help you, sir? And that's all I said, right? A nice, open, friendly way, body language is all in line and everything like that. And there was a brief glimpse of a sort of flicker of it looked like confusion to me. And I thought, what did I say wrong then, right? And then the owner, after we had a conversation, which went perfectly fine, he had some questions about how do we do this, that, and the other with the scanners and stuff. So, and then the owner said, Mr. David, I need to speak to you, right? And he took me to one side and he said, Mr. David, you are, he said, I've worked in the UK, and he said, I know you're doing nothing wrong, but this isn't, but it's different over here. And then he told me this analogy, right? And he said it's all about trust. He said, you are talking about business too early. He said, you must remember, he said that every man over here does not trust the other man because he thinks the other person is going to steal from them. And he said, so we have to spend a long time. Here's a punchline coming, right? We have to spend a long time gaining the trust of that other man. Only when we are certain we have gained his trust, then we steal from him. so anyway, so there's a hit squad coming for me now, isn't it? Yeah. But no, and I thought, and I laughed as you did. And he said, no, Mr. David, I'm serious.
Yeah,
wow. And I've corroborated that over various countries and cultures, and everyone's more or less. Yeah. So there's a different culture.
That's that sales training we did. That would be called premature recommendation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Are you still suffering from that?
Yeah. So it always makes me laugh. Whenever we used to train our managers, it would always bring a giggle.
Yeah.
So if we look out into the future, and we kind of go 10 years out from where we are now.
Yeah.
What the heck's it going to look like? Because you started, warming up wax decades ago, and now we're using digital workflows and digital technology, which means you can send a scan anywhere in the world and get it back to you, and it can be built on a printer. So where do we go in 10 years from now? What does that look like?
I think it follows. So you guys know about 4IR, Fourth Industrial Revolution, and so what do they talk about? They talk about sort of let's translate it into dentistry: a local scan, right? Remote design, local production. So there could be an element of the element of in-house production with only for certain things, dental technicians are still needed, but there will be an element of, if we talk about digital dentures, why aren't they just printed? They can be printed now. You can do that now. So they're printed, but the dentist doesn't want to be a technician. So the technician there will be design centers. They're there already, but I think that will change. And that threatens the industry somewhat, the traditional,
So they'll become smile consultants or something.
Yeah. And so I think it would be about services. But I think if you look at services, these things won't be apps necessarily connected to intraoral scanners. They'll be on your phone. And the new normal, or we've reverted to a normal, let's say, because it's not new normal anymore. It's normal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whether it's changed or not is another thing. But change was kind of forced upon the industry in certain ways, And I did see one question in the middle of the COVID thing last year, right? One question online, a dentist said, when we open up, how do we know that our lab work is clean, for a better word, right? Not contaminated. And then they all there was a big debate that I was watching this unfurl, and they basically said that the only way you can control that is if it's all in-house. So it doesn't leave this room. So the scan doesn't leave this. A scan to a lab is clean, isn't it? It's a digital file, right? So it's not van drivers picking up work and stuff like that. Now, whether that influences massive change on the industry, I mean, I've been charged with one of my challenges by our investors is to say, what does a dental lab look like in 10 years? We want to make it happen in 5, right, with our labs group, right? And that really is challenging, exciting. I find that exciting. Other people at the other side of the fence find that, rightly.
And like you say, quite often technology is way ahead of what is acceptable to people as well. The things that can be done with AI and things like that, they can't unleash it on the general population because it would just overwhelm people.
And if we go back to that, and if I go back just to finish off what I started to say earlier about the adoption of technology, and it's like you're hitting the shore, right? And everybody there that's got a vested interest in not, allowing that to get mainframe sort of thing is against you. Now, so what do you do? So you have to go in round the flanks, right? And you go in with things that traditional methods could not do.
Right.
So that's why there's thousands of iTero scanners out there for Invisalign, because you can't show the patients their immediate smile in the same appointment. And that's changed through the COVID. We don't want to bring a patient into a dental chair for a consult,
Yeah.
You want that to be the treatment. And Marcus does that brilliantly. When he sees a patient, it's the start of treatment because everything's happened elsewhere. And whether that's remotely or not is a moot point. But
it's fascinating.
It is how it moves on.
Fascinating. And like you say, it's great to be able to talk to you because you've got such experience and you've seen so many changes. Your thoughts on the future, I think, are well worth listening to because you've seen these changes come. And okay, none of us have got a crystal ball, but it's quite good to get your insight in terms of where it's going. Because for the people who want to lead the way, they can start bringing about those changes within their own business now.
Yeah, you don't have the clinical hang-ups.
Yes.
No, absolutely. And it's taking a pace now, right?
Yeah.
You've got that snowball, you've got that critical mass now because the early majority, the nervous people, are looking around thinking, well, everybody else has got one of these. I need to get one of these.
I think that's the key. I did a webinar for Dentsply Sirona, and I said I think one of the biggest changes is the fact of patients are going to expect you to have it because other people have it. So you've got to have part of the technological halo, because if you don't, they'll go and find someone else who does. And I think that's even if you don't believe in it or don't want to adopt it, the danger is that your patients will believe in it and adopt it. And if you don't adopt it, you're left behind, aren't you? Well, I don't believe that. Well, that's great because no one's coming to you. They've gone to Samita down the road who's got it.
And look at Invisalign, D2C, direct to customer branding and advertising. And I remember way back watching, what was it? I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. And in the middle of the advert, suddenly there's Invisalign advert. And I thought, Christ, they're going on mainstream TV now. And so you go and find a dentist.
Yeah, that's right.
So the dentist, so then you've got the momentum. You've got patients coming at you saying, I want this treatment.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Driven by consumers.
Absolutely. So maybe the future is that a patient could go to a scanning center, right? And that's run absolutely by the right professionally qualified person, and to do that. But they're just taking scans. And then the patient could be given options on aligners, cosmetic treatment, what their bleaching would look like, because you can change the shade. And then they say, okay, I want that done. Well, here's the list of the surrounding dentists that can give you that treatment, So I've given all my eggs away now, haven't I?
And where's the crowdfunding page that we can set up?
Absolutely. Yeah.
No, it's good stuff.
I've got badges to feed, gentlemen. I've got to make them.
Very good stuff. Well, we always finish up with a couple of questions, David. So we always ask people, if you could be in a certain situation, if you could be a fly on the wall in a certain situation with in a room, where would that be, and who would be in there? What would you love to be the observer of?
Andy, who would you choose? What would be your choice? Let's see if we're like-minded.
I think I would like to have been in the dressing room at half-time of the Champions League final when Manchester United were playing, and they ultimately went on to win the cup. Because I think from a people management point of view, Alex Ferguson is one of the most incredible people managers out there. I just can't imagine how you could herd a bunch of late teens, early 20s who have everything done for them and harness them in a way to get a particular result. And I'd love to listen to what he said to those people at half time that produced the result that it got, because I think from a people management point of view, that would just be fascinating to hear what he said, to get those guys.
I'm interested in sports performance. The mouth guards we used to go to a school where Johnny Wilkinson went, right? And I was talking to one of the teachers, and they from the local girls' public school, and they were family friends. And they said, little Johnny, when he was sort of 8, 9, 10 years old, he wouldn't be dropped off at a party. He's sort of stay with his parent, right? So shy and introverted from 10 to 18. And at 18, he's kicking conversions in front of 70,000 people at Twickenham. If you could bottle what that is and sell that, you'd make a fortune. Anyway, I digressed again. So my thinking about where I'd like to be a fly on the wall, I'm interested in music, and I've got my little digital recording studio, and I've recorded hundreds of instantly forgettable tunes, gentlemen, right? And so
I've heard some of them.
Yeah, you can't remember them though, can you? You just know you've heard them, you see. Anyway, so
Beats for Badgers, I think, is one of them.
Yes, yeah, that's what I'm going into. Yeah, it's different genre. But so I'm interested in recording, and I've followed the Beatles story, right? Read up on it, and it's not just the music. I thought the whole thing, the whole fact that how did they become hyper globally, boomed. There was all sorts of things, nobody's doing national service. It was the boom years, everything fell into place, right? Anyway, I would like to be a fly on the wall in Abbey Road, Studio 2, when they were recording. I've been to Studio 2, and it's like hairs on the back of my neck stood up, right? I'm going there again in about a month's time for a little tour, right? When they were recording Strawberry Fields Forever, because I think that was the perfect Strawberry Fields Forever, and Penny Lane was a double A side, right? I think that was the best single of all time, personally, right? Strawberry Fields Forever, it was recorded, and they did 2 versions of it, and they were in different tempos and different keys. And Lennon then decided that he wanted a bit from the first recording and a bit from the second recording. And George Martin said, that's impossible. They're different songs, they're in different keys, they're different tempos. And he said, you can sort it, So I would like to be on the wall in that room when they were recording, when there was a penny drop moment, when George Martin said, I've welded those 2 songs together. I brought this one down by 11%, and it's just luck. It's now the same key as that one. And now go and listen to Strawberry Fields Forever. It's just after about a minute. And the second one is more urgent, right? And you can see when he says, let me take you down because I'm going to, and little cello hits at about a minute, 10 seconds or whatever it is, right? That's the second version of that song. I'd love to have been a fly on the wall there.
There's something amazing about the keyboard in that as well. I can't quite remember. Is it something? It's one of the rare musical keyboard instruments or something.
Yeah, Mellotron at the beginning of it.
That's it.
And so Mellotron had tapes inside it. Look at now. Yeah, and they said they were a pain in the arse to transport anywhere because they were loops of tapes, 8 seconds of tapes of real instruments recordings. When you press that button, right, for a middle C, cello, whatever it is, then the tape goes for 8 seconds. And so they really caused a revolution. We talk about disruptive technology, right? Because they replaced orchestras and things like this, right? So Musicians Union were up in arms with that, came in because they said, so they had to fudge that they were using Mellotron, so they didn't otherwise they got the union, right? Kicked off because they said, well, you've stopped people earning the union rate of 10 shillings for that session sort of thing, right? So Mellotron at the beginning of Strawberry Fields, that intro is McCartney playing that.
Yeah, and I remember hearing it, watching it, and it was like, fascinating.
Let's have a listen. And my second question, which there may be a connection, is if you could meet anybody, who would you meet? Fact, fiction, still with us, may have gone?
Well, look, you got to go and meet Jesus, haven't you? Just to see what it was like. I'd go meet Jesus, but I'd like to meet Gandhi as well, and I'd like to meet, let's say George Harrison. But my chosen one is the 16-year-old Andy Acton.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
you'd be disappointed.
I agree. I probably would be, but I'd like to go back and see the young Andy Acton before you became learned. But I keep, joking aside. Right, keep the jokes in there. But joking aside, Andy, when you're hosting the clubhouse, I've told you this, right? When you're hosting your clubhouse, you bring in, and I've talked to this about with Adrian, right, and all our friends, right? You bring in so many quotes. You are obviously such a well-read man. So I want to,
I've just got loads of quotes. I don't read anything, honestly. I've just got an Instagram page I go to and I spout them off like it makes you sound clever.
But you always bring them into context. So you always bring the quote into context of what you're speaking. So I always learn something from you. So I before you got, all big-headed and stuff, I want to get to the young Andy Acton. Well, not get to, but,
Well, so there's a dinner in there, isn't there, at some point? Another dinner in there at some point.
There's dinner, and there's a compliment in there somewhere as well, Andy.
I'm very grateful.
Absolutely. So, so I put you as, I've cast aside Jesus, Gandhi.
Wow, look at that. Jesus,
other
Gandhi,
people.
George Harrison.
George Harrison basically played the ukulele, and I love that instrument. Right? If everybody was issued a ukulele at the point of your birth, there would be world peace and a hell of a lot of shit music.
There would. George Formby, love you.
Yeah. George Formby, absolutely, the innuendo king.
He would. He would indeed.
Yeah. All I can say is Little Stick of Blackpool Rock was not about Blackpool Rock at all. So let's leave it on a low, shall we? I think.
David, I've had
started on a low.
I've had a blast. It's been fascinating. It's been really good. Actually, I've really enjoyed it. Very entertaining. You've got great stories, I'll look forward to see what happens over the next 10 years.
Absolutely. Hopefully, my retirement. But anyway,
lovely.
Guys. Thanks very much.
Cheers, David.
Cheers, David. Thank you.
Cheers. Ta-da.
Thanks.
Bye. So that chat with David was fascinating, and for somebody that spent 38 years in the profession on the lab side and working with practices, from going that kind of soft wax through to digital dentistry, he's seen so many changes.
I think it was great because it also gives it from the sort of other side. I know, you could say that as he's a lab guy, then there's a vested interest, but there's actually a vested interest in dentists, patients and labs getting it all right. I think the one that will push it forward is consumers. Whenever you've got consumers who want something, that's where the change happens. And I think the dentist who resists this change is going to be left behind, because that's what consumers say. That's why people wanted cheap airfares. That's where EasyJet and Ryanair came from. Cheap cars. That's where when initially that's where the cars came from.
I think Japan, when he was talking about projecting out into the future, about scanning booths, design centres who will basically do the designing of what can be done. Yeah. And then effectively you end up with a package that can then be presented, sold to a dentist to deliver the treatment. And I think perhaps from a dentist point of view, that might be quite challenging. That in days of old, you would do the consult, the planning, the thinking, the design. Whereas actually if what David says does become a reality in years to come, that might be taken away from the dentist.
Yeah, I think one of the other things that's going to be interesting is legislation.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Because with all this stuff here, whether it's dentures or aligners or whatever, it's going to be quite interesting as to the fact of legally, is that going to be the thing that's, whilst a consumer might want it, do the GDC or whatever, say, well, actually, not too sure. And it is the danger that becomes almost a closed shop, because the reason is they want it to be, so as therefore it can't be open. Yeah. I mean, it's a fascinating dynamic of what could happen, isn't it?
A really good conversation, an intriguing guy, great stories. There's an episode, I really enjoyed it.
It's brilliant. It was really good. Really, really good.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Dentology, where we discuss the business of dentistry. If you like what you heard, please do subscribe where you found this episode. That would be amazing. And also follow us on Instagram.